want to be here tonight. If your sponsor made you come to this. I didn't get to Alcoholics Anonymous because I had a bad weekend. I had a couple of bad decades. And for me, like a lot of us, eventually this becomes a matter of life and death. Every meeting has their perpetual newcomer, especially if you live in a small community. We see that lost soul recycling through the rooms. I live on the west side of LA. I've known Ed since I was a newcomer. I'm 27 years sober, and I stood up for 17 years. I had so many chips and key tags, and not to be funny, I could have played poker with him. It's ridiculous. I remember one secretary saying, "Give him back." And I did that walk of shame over and over and over again. And looking back at that experience now, if you're new, I thank God for the unconditional love of the old timers. A lot of the old timers in our area that aren't with us anymore. A lot of those guys that died were 30, 40 years sober. And they watched me come in and out of the rooms. And they would say things to me like, "Don't even bother taking chips. Just sit in the back. Shut up." No, but in a loving way, right? But they made it really clear to me, and again, if you're new, I hope you hear this. They made it really clear to me that if and when I was ready, because somehow they could see it. They could see it my demeanor. They could see it by my lack of interest. I guess they could see it by my fidgety nature. They had, from their experience, maybe the wisdom to see just by my attitude that it wasn't right now. But they were so kind. They were so gracious. They were so forgiving. And they made it really clear to me that if and when I was ready, that the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous would always be open to a drunk like me. And I think looking back at that experience now, next to my parents, Alcoholics Anonymous is probably the closest thing to unconditional love that a drunk like me will ever experience. No matter how many people I burned, how many lives I destroyed, how many cars I wrecked, how many hearts I broke, how many jobs I lost, how many despicable, shameful things I did. And if you are, in fact, an alcoholic, it's the most shameful thing in the world to be the family drunk. Especially if you come from a large family like I do. My mom had 3 sisters and a brother. My dad had 3 brothers and a sister. And I can remember her as a teenager being on the phone telling them everything. I would cringe. One more rubber room, one more overdose, one more car wreck. Happy birthday, Dad. I'm in jail. Does anybody here relate to being paid not to come home on the holidays? It was horrific. It was horrific. And probably for the first decade of my recovery, I was unable to see it through the lens of Al-Anon. I couldn't see the annihilation of everything worthwhile, the destruction that I had created. But looking back at it now, I was an only child. I was a straight A student. I was the top of all my classes. My mom and dad were married over 50 years. And to watch them looking back in retrospect now, to watch them watch me literally burn my life to the ground and everything that they had hoped for. To the point where eventually my mom had sold the family property, she moved, and she did not leave a forwarding address. That's where I left her. And if you're new, despite all of that, the doors of AA have always been open to people like me. If I lived to be 100 years old, I could never pay AA back for the love and kindness that, some of you people have shown me. Not all. Not all. Not to be disrespectful, but if you like everybody in AA, you know what it means? It means you're probably not going to enough meetings. My sponsor said, you don't have to like everyone in AA, but if you go through the steps and the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous, you'll learn to love people here you don't even like. People that are difficult, people that are sarcastic, people that are condescending, people that are mean. Again, not to be disrespectful, but AA's not the hotbed of mental health. But looking back at it now, if I've learned anything in 27 years sober, it's compassion for my fellow man. It's also how to not take things personally. When I see that sarcastic, condescending, difficult person at a 7-Eleven pissing in his pants trying to get another drink, you know what? My heart still breaks for him. But there, for the grace of God, go I. How easily. One more punch, one more drink, one more hit could have easily put me in that spot. And what happened to me, and I know we never see this anymore, but eventually I started coming to meetings drunk. Now, we don't see a lot of drunk people in AA anymore. And of course, I don't want to bash the therapeutic community. I saw the druggy buggy out there. You know, but for me, hey, I mean, treatment would swoop me up in my most desperate moments, right? Throw me into yoga class. I'm in the downward dog. I mean, that was their answer, right? Craft hour. I'm making belt buckles and bongs, right? They don't know what to do with me. Nature walks. I'm walking to 7-Eleven, getting a big gulp cup, filling it up with liquor, putting a little Coke on top, walking back into the late night meeting, doing some of my best sharing. You know, and then I started going through treatment centers. And again, not to be funny, but there's a chapter in the big book, the chapter to Wise. Anybody read the chapter to Wise? I never read it. I never had a wife. Not of my very own. That's what is stirred up for the Al-Anons. I know there's a lot of Puritans in here, but the chapter to Wives talks about these 4 types, type 1, type 2, type 3, and it really illustrates the progression, right? Fun with problems, just problems. We've all heard this. Magic, medicine, misery. But the chapter to Wives talks about these 4 types, and that 4th type of alcoholic in the chapter to Wives is the type of alcoholic that's been placed in one institution after another. The type of alcoholic that typically drinks on his way home from the hospital. And in the 17 years that I recycled through Alcoholics Anonymous, albeit in one of the largest AA groups in the world, I still became that 4th type. By the time I finally got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd gone through residential treatment for alcoholism 28 times. Right, not 28 days like the movie. This isn't Hollywood. 28 consecutive times, and I'm wearing that like some kind of badge of honor. I thought that's what made me an alcoholic. And I remember telling my late sponsor, hey, I went through treatment 28 times. I was hoping that would get rid of the guy, loser. I didn't want to ruin his batting average. And he starts laughing like you guys, and I remember saying, I don't think that's funny. It was very serious, and he said to me, Adam, going through treatment 28 times that doesn't make you an alcoholic. And I said, you're kidding. He says, no, that just means you paid $500,000 for a big book. And I didn't think that was funny either. And I'm not going to start citing and quoting pages tonight out of the big book. But page 101 of the big book says any scheme that attempts to shield the alcoholic from temptation is doomed to failure. See, treatment was a great place to fatten me up for another run. Treatment has its rightful place in recovery. I'll tell you, treatment probably saved my life. Dr. Silkworth says we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic that's befogged or jittery. Even Bill Wilson had gone through treatment. Some people don't go through treatment. It's certainly not a prerequisite for Alcoholics Anonymous. But my experience for me is that in and of itself, treatment never solved the problem. And as an alcoholic, like a lot of us, I always thought the problem was alcohol. I thought it was liquor. And I remember someone in Alcoholics Anonymous saying to me, Adam, if alcohol's your problem, that drink, that shot glass, that 12-pack, that little glass of Chardonnay, if that's your problem, you're probably not an alcoholic. And then he paused, and in the very next breath he said to me, and if you are in fact an alcoholic, the type that's described in the doctor's opinion in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, your problem isn't alcohol. And I'm like, what? It took another decade for me to understand what he was trying to tell me. It was almost like some kind of cruel riddle. I drank over that for years. But what happened to me, and if you're new, you're going to hear that a lot. What happened? What happened to me is I got around a group of big book literalists, people in Alcoholics Anonymous that took the statements in the big book, turned them into questions, directed the questions at me. Very simple ideas. Like, was I incapable of being honest with myself? Did I in fact drink because I liked the effect produced by alcohol? Well, duh, that's a no-brainer. How about this if you're new? Was I restless, irritable, and discontent by nature? Was that my natural state before my lips ever touched alcohol? Very powerful question. Was my greatest obsession that somehow, someday, I would control and enjoy my drinking? And the proof, the last idea, did I pursue that illusion, meaning just out of reach to the gates of insanity and death? And what happened to me, if you're new, as I went through those considerations, after being in meetings for 17 years, is for the first time I saw the truth. And the most obvious truth, what we call the external unmanageability, was crystal clear. From the time I was in middle school, I remember being in 8th grade. I was already pissing in my pants. I was already drooling on my desk. I was already passed out under the bleachers. I overshot the mark from the very first time I drank. My nickname in 8th grade was Space Cadet. I couldn't find homeroom. People were picking high schools. I was already picking rehabs. But if you're new tonight, alcoholism, like addiction, comes in people. It doesn't come in bottles or 6-packs or 12-packs or kegs or shot glasses or little $100 bottles of wine. Alcoholism comes in people. And the greater aspect of this spiritual illness, as Bill Wilson describes it, centering in my mind, if going through the considerations in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous shows me anything at all, it shows me that an alcoholic of my type, an alcoholic of this type, cannot really live without alcohol, not successfully, not happily. And part of what it really means for me to be an alcoholic, if I really look at my relationship with liquor, is that I seem to have this mind that consistently takes me back to that first drink. Every time I get released from an emergency room, a hospital, a fancy Malibu treatment center, men's central jail, 5743, roll it up. It's amazing to me. I've been in county jail for public intoxication more times than I can count. And I'm sitting in that little cell on my little cot, casually reading a novel, not a cloud on the horizon. And I hear that release number, 5743, roll it up. And suddenly there's this visceral compulsion in me that is so powerful that I'm vomiting on my way to the liquor store just with anticipation. I haven't even drank yet. And you think at that point I'm going to call my sponsor? It's the last guy I'm going to call. As soon as I hear that release number, there is something in me that is so powerful. And there's nothing on God's earth that's going to stop me from taking that train. And I come to AA, and I know people mean well when they say things like, well, don't drink no matter what. And I'm like, I'm educated, right? I got a college degree. I'm like, what happened to the top of page 24 where it says verbatim, every alcoholic passes through the state where even the strongest desire is of absolutely no avail. It says, for someone like me, my willpower will become virtually non-existent. I understand. There's a lot of people that have that power of choice. That first idea, that cover charge for this program is loss of control. We read it in chapter 3 every time we read it. It's real simple. I got a car outside. It's got no brakes. I got to make it back to the west side. As soon as I take that car out of gear, I'm going to hit an emergency room. I'm going to hit a police car. I'm going to get a case. A lot of people know they've lost control, and you know what? That's enough for them. But this idea of loss of choice, this idea that somehow I can't stop myself, that I'm going to sit in that car and I'm going to tell myself I'm not going to take it out of gear this time. And over and over and over again, no matter what that line is that I draw in the sand, I can't stop myself from taking it. And even greater than loss of choice is this idea of loss of power. And the word power is used 25 times in We Agnostics. And what I've discovered for me, it is the lens through which I see the world. My attitude, my belief system, and my conduct. And if somehow I can change those ideas, for the first time in my life, I got free. And I hear people, and I know they mean well when they say, don't drink no matter what. But for someone like me, there had to be a translation. It's go to meetings no matter what. Work steps no matter what. Maintain commitments no matter what. Be of service no matter what. Develop this discipline of steps 10, 11, and 12, which is peace, power, and purpose. And Silkworth, in his brilliance, he says, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, someone like me, right, completely hopeless, who lived in institutions off and on for 17 years, he said, is suddenly, easily able to control my desire for alcohol. What a powerful thing that is. if you're like me. And I know we like to say AA has no evidence-based results. I'm like, really? We were just at the World Convention. I was there with 42,000 people. Doing the third step prayer with 42,000 people, I couldn't stop crying. And I was taught to never cry. And when you see that, for every one of those people that have made that kind of effort, that have got a passport, gone to a different country, got a credit card and all that stuff, a hotel room, a rent-a-car, for every one of those people that have made that effort, you'll see a mom, a dad, a grandma, an uncle, an aunt. You'll see a world of people that'll tell you, this is the most powerful thing in my loved one's life. I had to see that and stand there and suddenly realize for the first time in my life, it wasn't intellectual. It was a feeling in my heart that I'd never had before, that I am not alone. My sponsor said, Adam, it doesn't matter who's wrong. It doesn't matter who's right. It just matters who's left. And we look at people like Ed here, 50 years, 10, 20, 30, 40 years sober, that have great lives, that have relationships that work, that have learned how to navigate around the drama, that have learned how to match calamities with serenity. And what happened to me, that idea again, what happened, is for the first time in my life, and we beg of you if you're new, I became teachable. I became willing to take actions in Alcoholics Anonymous that I did not yet believe in. And I started to understand that very simple idea. I look back at 17 years of failure, again, in one of the largest groups of AA in the world, and what I see looking back is my defiance towards spiritual principles. And what that means, if you're new, is that I will argue with anybody about anything at any time. You tell me it's black, I'll tell you it's white. You tell me it's big, I'll tell you it's small. You tell me to go left, I'll go right with an attitude. Right? That's why we say denial's an acronym. It stands for don't even notice I am lying. Think about it. You could tell an alcoholic, you can't tell them much. Oh, you don't believe it? Try sponsoring somebody. And what that means, if you're new, like the 11th tradition, you can lead me into the gates of hell, but you can't push me into heaven. We talk about attraction rather than promotion in that 11th tradition. What that meant to me as an alcoholic is eventually I would come back to AA on my own terms. Not because Sober Living wanted me to, not because my parole officer wanted me to, not because DCSF thought it was a good idea. I mean, I live on the west side, right? They all get sober for the trust fund. But my experience is hope doesn't matter to me until I'm hopeless. You think hope matters to me when I got $500,000 left in the bank, brand new truck, right? Little boat down in the marina? You wouldn't catch me dead in an AA meeting. And my experience, if you're new, for me, is that God didn't matter to me until my back was against the wall. And what happened, I mean, it's not gutter bravado. I got shot in a little argument, went right through me. I'm laying on the gurney. I've got the paramedics over me with the little paddles. I'm still conscious. And you know what? All I know is God. I mean, if you've ever been confronted with your mortality, right? There's only two things men cry for, mommy and God, right? I mean, come on, anybody have their head in the toilet every morning with the dry heaves? Every morning, vomiting out my esophagus. Who prays more than drunks like us? Come on. I mean, I don't know if the Al-Anons relate to that, but it's really fascinating because in Bill's story, he talks about this powerful white light experience. And on the very next page, it says, it was quickly blotted out by worldly clamors, most of which were within himself. So they put me in this ambulance, and I remember like it was yesterday, put a tampon right through me, go right through both sides. That's the way they deal with gunshot wounds. And I get to the emergency room, and I'd never been closer to God than at that moment. All I wanted to do was, this is all that mattered to me. I wanted to tell my mom how sorry I was. Like Bill talks about, my conscience came to me at that moment. And all I wanted to tell her was how sorry I was. Because I remember all her expectations, all her hopes of me, all her dreams for me. And for me to end up like that, all I wanted to tell her was I was sorry. I was closer to God than I'd ever been. So I'm in the cardiologist's office in the wing of the ER, and he does an angiogram, which is where they stick this cord through your groin and they pump the dye through your heart, and he's looking at the dye on a TV screen like behind me, and he looks at me and he smiles and he says, "Oh, the bullet missed everything. You're going to be fine." And I went from, "God, I will do anything you ask of me," and in 1 second it's like, I need to get out of here before law enforcement shows up, and where's my bottle? Like, it was that quick. And if you're new, my experience is that there's a huge difference between the act of surrender that got me into Alcoholics Anonymous over and over and over and over again. There's 3 ways people get here: crisis, intervention, and they just get tired. Those first 2 did not work for me. Anything. You want to see drama? Get between an alcoholic and a drink. And that idea of this state of surrender, big difference between the act of the surrender that got me in here and the state of surrender that keeps the old timers here. It's a completely different concept. It's like watching a swan glide across a pond of still water. It's so beautiful, right? It's so effortless. It's so graceful. But we all know what that swan's doing under the water, right? He's paddling like hell. And if you're new, we have a chapter in the book, right? Into action. Anybody notice there's no chapter into feelings? No offense to the therapist. Into thinking. And what happened to me is I got around a group of people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is the way they started with me. They took that circle and triangle and they turned it into action. There's a story in the back of the big book. It's called The Keys of the Kingdom. It's a beautiful story. And at the end of the story, she says, now there is a feeling of being wanted, needed, and loved. And she says, in place of a bottle and a hangover, I've been given the keys to the kingdom. There's a therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's expensive. In AA, it's $1. Now it's like 2 or 3. But the idea is I can't think my way into right living, but I can live my way into right thinking. And my sponsor said that triangle, recovery, unity, and service, translates into 3 fundamental actions. It's just like if there was a weight pile in the middle of this room. Every day I lift weights for an hour, I'm going to get strong. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. And my sponsor said that triangle, recovery, unity, and service, translates into these ideas: contribute, belong, and learn. Contributing is service. The more that I'm of service, the more I feel needed. The more I stand at the door of an AA meeting and I shake people's hands, the more I feel wanted, because, see, I cannot separate cause from effect. Hi, I'm Adam. Hi, I'm Adam. Hi, I'm Adam. What happens is I walk into the room and everybody knows me. I go to meetings half an hour early. You go to a party late, you always feel like an outsider. You do. Come to a party late, you always feel like you're outside looking in. I come to a party half an hour early, I help set up, I get to meet the host, I put out the chairs, it's my party. I come to a meeting half an hour early, I get to know the secretary, I get to talk to everyone in the meeting, I feel like I belong here. I'm wanted. And that idea of to uncover, discover, and discard that which is blocking me from God, self, and others. See, that triangle, recovery, unity, and service, translates into being wanted, needed, and loved. It's a very simple idea. The steps bring me wisdom. The fellowship where 2 or more are gathered bring me power. And by reaching back in my community and helping other people, what happened is, for the first time in my life, I was able to give and receive love, like bilaterally, not unilaterally. It just adds up that way. You know, we were talking about this other place. It's like if you were to take my relationship with God, my relationship with self, my relationship with others, and put an equal sign under it, it would equal detox. And what I didn't understand is Alcoholics Anonymous showed me how to change that equation. It showed me how to recalibrate those ideas to be what we call on the beam. Thank God we don't look like our stories, right? So what happened to me is I got to one more treatment center, 120 pounds, dying of alcoholism. You know how we look, right? I was missing a couple teeth, a vision for you. And I'm sitting in the treatment center, you know, in my nightgown with my ass hanging out, judging the speaker. It's so funny how we're the only people that could be on the curb and still look down at the world, right? I got two speeds, grandiose and comatose. I'm strutting around the detox bragging about robbing Brinks trucks. Finally did my four-step. It was a bread truck. It was empty. So I'm sitting there in this treatment center, and this woman comes in on an H&I panel. If you're not aware, H&I stands for hospitals and institutions. It's a committee that brings meetings into prisons, detoxes, treatment centers, hostels. We also call it homies and inmates, but our H&I is about this big. It meets this Monday. We get about 200 people fighting each other to get on panels to talk to people that don't care. But I think H&I probably has one of the lowest relapse rates in all of recovery. So this woman's on this H&I panel. We're in the audience. She comes in. She does her talk. And at the end of her talk, she looks us all up and down and she says, if I could give you all the gift of recovery, I wouldn't do it. And I looked at her and I remember looking at my friend and no disrespect, I said, what a bitch. And then she said something, if you're new, that would later change my life. She said, the reason I wouldn't give you the gift of recovery, the reason I wouldn't give it to you is because I wouldn't rob you of the journey. And all these years later, again, if you're new, that journey to recovery, just like that journey to surrender, that each and every alcoholic has to walk if you're new, we can't give you that. And again, not to be divisive. If you're in a hot tub with a supermodel, a fifth of whiskey, and an 8-ball, and Daddy sends you to rehab, we don't expect you to be happy. Nothing like getting interrupted in the middle of a fifth of scotch. It's the worst. You know, and it's funny because, yeah, I was like 16, 17 years old in Alcoholics Anonymous. And there was a time when there were no young people. I know YPA started, but 40 years ago there weren't. And I was a kid. I got my first drunk driving in high school. And you know, the old timers were like, you know what, kid, we spilled more than you drank. And we're like, you know what, Pops, we didn't spill any. That's why we got here sooner. They would say all kinds of, we're so scared to hurt people's feelings. I'll tell you, I'd rather step on your toes in your grave. They told me, if you don't like the old timers in AA, don't worry about it. You'll never be one. Ooh. I had to find old timers. I had to ask for help. Life is lived forward and understood backwards. That's the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous, is I had to be teachable for me. And eventually what happened to me, and again, not gutter bravado, I got to a place where my head couldn't get enough and my body couldn't take any more. Skid Row's full of people like that. When my head can't get enough and my body can't take any more, and I'm knocking on death's door, God means something totally different to me. It means grow or die. Then I'm faced with these two alternatives. They're not choices. Go on to the bitter end, right? We've all heard it. Blotting out the intolerable situation of the others to accept spiritual help. I mean, really? Faced with alcoholic destruction or to live on a spiritual basis, these are not easy alternatives, really? Do a survey at Costco. Jails, institutions of death, happy, joyous, and free. It's a no-brainer. You step over to my cell in Men's Central Jail and you start talking to me like that, I'm like, how bad an alcoholic death? Can I talk to my counselor, my therapist, my MFT, my parole officer, my attorney, and get back to you on Monday? And I will justify, minimize, and rationalize my right to get loaded. The first half of step one, me defending my right to drink. The rest of my life, defending my right to play God. There's a saying, God can't use a man or woman until they come to the end of themselves. I got that. The word codependency means doing something for someone else they should be doing for themselves. What I didn't understand is every one of those things was blocking me from surrender. The longest trip isn't from my head to my heart. It sounds great. The longest trip for someone like me was my knees to the ground. Because only at that point, you don't realize God's all you need till God's all you have. And what I didn't understand, if you're new, is the bottom really, if you work with a lot of people in sponsorship, the bottom seems to really be the same. From Yale to jail, Park Avenue, Park Bench, the bottom has two fundamental ideas. And you see it in Dr. Bob's Nightmare. He says, do you want to stop for good and for all? That's a black and white question. And the second is, do you need help? And the bottom for me was when I asked for help. But see, thousands of people breached this threshold here. Millions probably. If everyone came to AA State, would be in a football field. It's not when I ask for help, it's when I'm actually willing to receive it. And I'll make it simple. I throw you a life raft and you're like, I was looking for a blue one. What? Bro, I don't really like the way you threw it, man. I'm like, how do you work with someone like that? And this is a book, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is on the top 88 books in the United States Library of Congress. Harvard and Stanford both studied the effects of Alcoholics Anonymous. The conclusion was the same. The results of AA exceeded all the other modalities combined. Silkworth knew that back then when he said the aggregate is substantial, but we haven't scratched the surface. That's why Silkworth was so impressed with this. This idea, it's funny because we're the only people that want to reward because we ran out of a burning building. I mean, if you're feeling heroic, right, because you gave up your big Saturday night in Ventura to hang out with us, this is the only place on God's earth where they'll applaud because you came in to save your own life. You're sitting here thinking about drinking, beats the hell out of being in a, like, sleazy bar, thinking about getting sober. You're wondering when the miracle's going to happen. You're in an AA meeting, Saturday night. The miracles happen. I was told my sobriety is God's gift to me. What I do with it is my gift to God. This old timer said it years ago to me. He said, Adam, there's 3 prayers. The first one, God give me. The second one, God help me, right? That's the prayer we always say. But the prayer I'd never said was, God use me. And I bumped into Scott and got to come here and I got to see Bruce, who I sat in meetings with for at least 15 years. You know, we have this history. I never had history. You know, and going through treatment 28 times, I know there's a lot of new people here and I don't want to be offensive, but I started to speak a foreign language in treatment. You guys know what it is, right? It's called victimese. It's like, I don't understand how the drink bone connects to the jail bone. Like, I need a class for that? What are they calling that now? Relapse prevention. It's kind of like I met her in AA. I can't believe she drank. God, really? I knew he was a crackhead. Can't believe he stole my iPhone. And it's kind of funny, but it's how the book talks about how I make decisions based on self that later leave me in a position to be hurt. My experience is until I connected those dots, I continued to play victim. Victims don't get sober. I had to understand the decisions I made based on self. And over a period of time, that radically changed my perception of reality. And if you're like me, fear's not going to keep me here. Getting a 3rd strike, living on the street, being homeless, losing my career. I don't know if scared straight worked for you guys. Went right over my head. And the book talks about the problem drinker. We've all heard this. Big difference between a problem drinker and a real alcoholic. Think about it. You get a problem drinker and a real alcoholic in a drunk tank. You know, remember the rubber room for drunk driving? You got 2 completely different philosophies going on. You got the problem drinker over here on one side of the cell thinking, why did I drink so much last night? I knew I shouldn't have drank so much. Why didn't I take Uber? Real alcoholics on the other side of the cell thinking, why did I take the 101? See, now the court card people never laugh at that. That's not funny. Right? Problem drinker's wife says, you don't stop drinking, I'm leaving you. Problem drinker cleans up his act, gets some Visine. My woman says, you don't stop drinking, I'm leaving you. You know what I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking about single life. And that's been my experience. If anything got in the way of booze, it was out of my life. I mean, alcohol had me from hello, right? It completed me. You think I'm going to let go of the love of my life without a fight? I can't even let go of a bad relationship. Everything I let go of has claw marks all over it. And if you're new, my experience with AA now is identical. If anything gets in the way of AA, for me, it's out of my life. A woman, I don't care how beautiful she is, how in love we are, my soulmate. I remember the first time I said that in an AA meeting, there she was in the back of the room. And she's like, God, Adam, you don't look like an alcoholic. Why do you got to go to all those meetings, honey? please, you're not speaking again another weekend? Then she says, you know, that AA program, it's kind of getting in the way of our relationship. So now we're having trouble. So we're still together, and now it's the big night. You know, the big night, meet the parents night. So she invites me over to mom and dad's house. Out comes the exotic wine. I'm at the head of the table, suit and tie. She's like, honey, you can have one glass of wine. It's just a glass of wine, sweetie. One glass. It's a toast. It's natural wine. Oh, yeah, 4 more rehabs. I stole her purse that night. Went down to the hood and got an outside issue. And she came to detox with a get well card, poor thing. I got 4 cards from that one. I tried to send her to Codependence Anonymous. She wouldn't go. You know why? She didn't have anyone to go with. I can always tell the Al-Anons, they don't think any of this is funny. Right? Can't stand to see us have a good time even here. So my poor mom, and I know a little bit of time left, but my mom had gone to Al-Anon, and before she moved and didn't leave a forwarding address. And it's funny because the Al-Anon humor was, you know, the Al-Anons, it takes a screw in a light bulb? None. The Al-Anon detaches and lets it screw itself. And now I'm sponsoring people that are exactly like my mother, dealing with a kid exactly like me. And God, I wish I could tell her how sorry I was. It's like it put me right back into the exact position in the same scenario. I didn't cause it, I can't control it, I can't cure it, and I will not contribute to it. And what happened is I went through the traditions and I applied them to our family. Our common welfare comes first. Our family depends on our unity. For our family's purpose, there's a loving God. We don't lead. It's democratic, this idea of having a voice. And as I went through that process, like the outside issues, you know, intimacy is not 2 people looking at each other. It's 2 people playing different instruments to the same music. What happened with my mom is I discovered what she loved. I stayed away from the hot spots. You ever wonder why your family pushes your buttons? It's because they installed them. But the idea behind this is to avoid that. To develop this idea of what she loved. She loved music, she loved history, she loved cooking. God, I wish I had her recipes. She was a professional chef. She loved music. She loved jazz. And it's like, when I built our relationship on what she loved, because if a relationship's 90% good and 10% bad, I would burn it to the ground. And what I learned is to nurture what she loved. She became my best friend. My dad was exactly the same. Hated my dad. Absolutely despised him. He was never there for me as a little boy. And what happened is I went through a part of the book where it says, we realized the people who offended us were also perhaps spiritually sick. And this is exactly what it says. Although we did not like their symptoms, column 2, the way it disturbed us, column 3, like ourselves, we're sick too. My sponsor said, everywhere you have a resentment, are you capable of the same behavior? If I resent you for gossiping, did I ever gossip? Resent you for lying, did I ever lie? Resent you for stealing, did I ever steal? I resented my dad for abandoning me. Here was the question. Did I ever abandon anyone I loved for my true love, alcohol? And there it was. And behind every resentment, there will be a lie. And the lie for me, I had to tell myself to hate my father, was his love for me should have been more powerful than his alcoholism. Once I got that piece, I got to forgiveness. Forgiveness is releasing someone from the prison of my own mind. It has nothing to do with the other person. Behind forgiveness is compassion. Behind compassion is empathy. And that walk that I did with my dad. Now he's 94, I'm taking care of him. This old man looks at me one day and he says, son, I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you when you were a little boy. And I found out that at 5, my grandmother was hiding him under tables during World War II. At 9, she died of cancer. He was orphaned. At 14, he joined the military in Europe. They were taking kids. And I'm expecting him to treat me like Mr. Brady. If you don't know who that is, go to Hulu. But that discovery, he became my best friend. See, if people have to change for me to be happy, I'll never be happy. Einstein said there's one person on this planet, the worst of us. The worst things you'll ever see people do are all of us on our worst day. I couldn't believe that. until I got that kind of compassion. And then I became truly forgiving. If someone did to me what I did to myself, I hate to say this, but I would have killed them. We all know that, right? If somebody did to me what I did to others, I would have killed them. And then I came to AA and you wanted me to pray to God. I didn't want God to find out where I was. I was bankrupt. But if you really look at the steps by design, they remedy those three ideas. 1 through 3, recreate and develop a relationship with God. 4 through 7, recreate and develop a relationship with self. 8 and 9, recreate and develop a relationship with others. It's a very simple idea. Surrender, catharsis, restitution, service. And then to maintain this way of life in 10, 11, and 12. There was a great spiritual teacher. He was asked, what's the most important thing of all your teachings? He said, love God with all thy heart. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And you know what? If God scares you out of AA and you're a real drunk, don't worry about it. Booze will scare you back in. So when 1 through 3, I give it up. 4 through 7, I clean it up. 8 and 9, I make it up. 10, 11, and 12, I keep it up. I'll just finish with this last thing, and this is the only thing I can brag about, Ed, because I don't have a big boat or anything really nice. But I was at this airport, and I'm standing there waiting for this plane, and this guy comes charging me from across the terminal, and he's wearing this is how he's dressed. He's got a slingshot T-shirt, full body tattoo. He's got the neck thing, the teardrops, and we all know what that means, right? And he gets me up against the wall, and he's like, you don't remember me, do you? I'm like, no, I don't remember you. And I thought he was going to hit me up for money. He's really aggressive. And he had these beautiful little kids with him. He had this lady by his side, and there's this awkward moment, and he said it to me. This was the golden ring. He said, 15 years ago, you spoke on a prison panel, and something you said changed my life. He said, these are my beautiful daughters. This is my amazing wife. This is my family. We want to thank you. And all of a sudden, the wife starts crying. The faucet's on, she's crying, these little kids are crying. Now I'm crying, right? A minute ago, I didn't know whether to run or call security. Now we look like the long-lost family from the old country. Weird, creepy, but it was actually quite beautiful. So my head's getting big, right? Now I'm thinking I'm the Dalai Lama. So I make the mistake of calling my sponsor. My sponsor's like, Adam, you got a big mouth and a good memory. Don't let it go to your head. Click. And to ruin my moment. But if you're new tonight, there's 2 dates in a human being's life. The day we're born, the day we find out why. All my life, I thought it was about money, property, and prestige. Beautiful girl, big job, nice car, big house. But you know what? Puke smells the same in a Mercedes. You got what I've got. I had to solve the spiritual problem first. Then I can have the other stuff. I chased money, property, and prestige my whole life. We're suggesting chase a spiritual life, and money, property, and prestige will chase you. Wayne Dyer said it better than anybody. You come to this earth with nothing. You will leave with nothing. Whether you're Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, you will leave here with nothing. You will be in that next room. The only thing I can do while I'm on this earth is give it all away. And it's not about the materialism. If you're new, you're in an organization where we have the ability to give unlimited experience, strength, and hope to the next person that walks through that door. When anyone, anywhere reaches out for help, we want the hand of AA to be there. For that, I am responsible. Thank you very much.
Let's thank our speaker again.